Hello everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be showing off the 10 best Pokemon VMAX, because Pokemon VMAX are essentially done being printed, and soon the new Pokemon EX are going to come out, so that's really cool. But let's look back on the VMAXs to see what's been good. And of course, it can't be a top 10 list without 11 Pokemon, so I'm going to start off with an honorable mention here, one that's really good right now, but it's very new, and that's going to be Kyurem, which I spelled right this time. So that's cool. It has a good damage output, cool ability. It's kind of like a partner with Palkia, which is decent. And Palkia is really good right now. So Kyurem's seen a bunch of play, but it doesn't quite compete with a lot of the top decks. And the fact that it just is a bit inconsistent because you need all this energy on to do a lot of damage. And it can be shut off by Path and stuff like that. So it's a good card, certainly. And if it came out earlier, I might feel inclined to put it on the top 10, but right now it's just so new. It's in the newest set, Lost Origin, so I can't really put it in the top 10, but a very good card, and if you have it and play it, it's good. But moving on to number 9 here, or number 10, which is the second card on this list. As I said, we need 11 cards to make it a proper top 10. And the 10th card here is going to be a single strike Pokemon. So there are a few that I was thinking between. And single strike Pokemon aren't. They've been good, but they haven't been completely dominant. I was thinking, what's the best one? There's one that really stuck out to me, and that's Umbreon VMAX here, which is really good. The other two that were considered were Gengar VMAX, which does really big damage and is a really good spot right now because of Dark Patch and the ability to hit the right numbers to KO V-Stars. But generally, it's not super strong. And there's also Single Strike Urshifu VMAX, which is here, which is one of the first Battle Styles Pokemon revealed. And it's strong, but it's really expensive and inconsistent, so it's not making the list. But we have Umbreon here, which I lost again. It should be here. So it has a really good ability called Dark Signal, which just allows you to gust when you play it. Obviously, it doesn't work if Path's in play, but honestly, it's not too big of a deal, and you probably want to play the Single Strike Stadium. Also, Max Darkness 160 for 3, but 2 attachments if you use Double Turbo. And you can one-shot Muse with this. It's a great typing. Isn't weak to fighting like a lot of Dark Pokemon, so that's really nice. And just the gusting ability means it's really techable in a lot of different decks. So Umbreon VMAX is just super good. It hasn't seen a ton of plays super recently, but it was one of the best decks during the Evolving Skies period, and one of the best, if not the best, evolution. In fact, not the only evolution on this list, but there's actually one more that we're going to be going over here that comes in at number 9, and that's Jolteon. Let's see, I did not uncheck the box. PTCGO is sometimes a bit weird with the check marks. Okay, there we go. So, going to look at Jolteon VMAX here, which is super strong with this Max Thunder Rumble attack. Bit of a weird name there. But for a Lightning and a Nicolas, it does 100 damage to the active and 100 to one of the benched, if they have damage counters on that. So, a bit of a difficult requirement sometimes, but you can use Goons and other pings to just get the KOs on the bench. So, it's really strong right now. There's a lot of Manaphy, but it's so good being able to take out single prizers. It's also just enough HP to survive hits from most things. Its weakness to fighting, though, is held it back a bunch, specifically with stuff like Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX and Galarian Zapdos V, and fighting just being both a very good type and a very targeted type. So its low health combined with its weakness is a bit of an issue, but its free retreat's really nice. Its attack is also really cheap, only 1 energy if you have the, I believe, Elemental badge on. So you can use Cheryl, and this is one of the best Cheryl uses in the game. So Jolteon VMAX is just super good, and probably the best evolution. Obviously, Umbreon very good as well, but super good Pokemon, and super neat being able to do spread. It doesn't do a ton of damage, though, so that's why it kind of isn't in the upper half of the top 10. It will struggle to deal with one big target on your opponent's side of the board, but overall, it's a really strong VMAX. Now we actually have another single strike Pokemon VMAX, but this isn't a traditional single strike necessarily. It's Duraludon VMAX, also from Evolving Skies. Though it doesn't really use the single strike tools too much. Occasionally it will use Mustard or Karen's Conviction or something. Really, it has its amazingly powerful ability Skyscraper, which means it's immune to damage from Pokemon with special energy. And so that's absolutely insane. It used to be really good with stuff like Mew VMAX all around and some other special energy with Rapid Strike Urshifu and stuff, but right now it's still pretty decent. Paired with Arceus, it's gotten decently consistent, though consistency is still its biggest struggle. The fact that its attack Gmax Pulverization does 220 and hits through effects, that's really solid. Not overpowered, but certainly good. It's just a very strong card, and it also has an interesting V that we can open up here, where it takes less damage, so Tanky V Max, an overall really strong card. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel, and if you're not liking the content, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you are subscribed, just double check. I believe YouTube's had some glitches where it unsubscribes people from channels. I'm not actually sure if that's the case, but I've heard other people say that, so just double check on that. But obviously, let's get back into the video because there are a number of other cards to check in on. And at the next place, number 7, we have a bit of a surprising card. Not because it's not good, but because it actually was a really good. And that's Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. A really strong card. It's ability Underworld Door, allowing you to accelerate psychic energy from your hand to your bench psychic Pokemon. And obviously, this is really good for accelerating to Shadow Rider Calyrex itself. And if you accelerate energy, you draw 2 cards. So comparing it to something like Make Do or Trade or I think Diving Draw was the name of the ability on Empoleon from Dark Explorers. I'm not sure, but pretty much they say discard 1, draw 2. So they have a downside, but a good upside, and they're all really good. But then you look at Shadow Rider, and you're like, there's no downside. It's just an upside, draw 2. An upside, attach an energy, which is just insane. And it came out of the gates swinging, being, like, so good. And it's also really good and expanded. But it just does so much damage with its Max Geist attack, which does 30 for each psychic energy attached to all your Pokemon. But a big reason why it's fallen off is because it takes time to build up. It's one of those Pokemon that's been hit kind of badly by rotation last year, or this year, I guess. And it also struggles in its path to the peak, struggles against Dark-type Pokemon. It's still a very good card, though. And now with Arceus, it might even be better. And so it's in a decent spot. As I said, when it came out, it was so good, and everyone thought it was going to break the game. It didn't, but it was quite strong, and it deserves a spot on this list. When it came out, people thought it would have ended up number 1, but looking back, it doesn't see a ton of play, so number 7's fine. It being the 7th best VMAX is still really good, and this card's super strong, and you should give it a spin if you have it. I've tried it out, and it's really fun being just able to pile tons of energy on, but it sometimes struggles in the current meta because it's not quite fast enough, despite being on horseback. Then we have another really interesting card here, and that's actually Flying Pikachu of VMAX from Celebrations. So, no special art, but man, this art's really fun. And if you didn't see my video on Flying Pikachu, you might want to check that out because it's really good right now. And if you haven't seen or heard, it actually won both a major regional championship and the world championship because being paired with Arceus and some other stuff, but it's just so strong. It can hit 160 for 3, although 2 if you have a double turbo, so that's really good, and it one-shots Palkia, so it's a great counter to Palkia, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's good on its own. But it also is immune to basic Pokemon, so that's really good, and that gives it counters to stuff like Reggie's, and also stuff like Blissey Miltank, and some other interesting decks that play mostly basic Pokemon. And then there are also, it also has a V with Free Retreat, which is surprisingly good in the current meta with Arceus. So you want to attack with that turn 1 going second, and the Free Retreat just gives you that out to it so often. So Flying Pikachu is the ultimate counter Pokemon. It beats almost, not all the top decks, but a lot of the top decks. It also has really solid weakness, only being weak to Lightning, which is its own type. So the mirror matches are interesting, but then It also just isn't weak to too many good Pokemon. And small techs like Raikou V or Zeraora V, which may be teched into decks to counter Lightning Weak Pokemon, don't work because they're all basic. So this it looks like it's just filled with air, but it's really filled with I was gonna say lead, but that's not really a good thing to be filled with in any definition. But it's certainly Chonky Boy, and has some chonky wins. So yeah, Flying Pikachu is really good. Don't underestimate it. Some people have, and they've lost. So Flying Pikachu is absolutely insane. Then there's also Dragapult, which is the next card on our list, which is super interesting. And this is coming in at, I believe, number 5. Yeah, number 5. So we're breaking into the top half of the top 10 with an honorable mention. So it's kind of top 11. But Dragapult's super good. It does 130 for 2. I want this Dragapult. 130 for 2 and places 5 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon. And that doesn't look amazing starting off because it's essentially 180 for 2 on a VMAX, which isn't that good. A lot have done like a lot more than that. Notably, stuff like even Jolteon does more. And a lot can do more, especially to the active. But Dragapult's really good because it can spread that damage around to the bench. And admittedly, it had 2 really good stretches. One when it first came out, where health was a bit lower, but then later on when Path of the Peak came out, a little after that, it just was so good being able to disrupt your opponent, forcing opponents to play single prize engines, and Max Phantom being able to defeat benches pretty easily. It doesn't do as much bench damage as Jolteon, but it does deal with the active better. And it can also use Cheryl some. You can mix in that 60 poke for 1 energy, which isn't too bad, and it hits through effects as well. So it beats single prizers, and it's one of the VMAXs that really does that the best. It's also just, as I said, really good at taking out engines, and it can also finish off Pokemon on the bench. So your opponent can't really retreat their damaged Pokemon like they can most of the time. And so you have the ability to just completely obliterate your opponent's board state, and it's super good, specifically with Path to the Peak. It's also a decent typing. Dark has been good, but like a lot of the Dark decks rely on abilities on Pokemon V, so you can just block that with Path, and then there's resistance to fighting, which is really nice, and it also is really good because it hits a lot of fighting Pokemon for weakness, and I think some other Pokemon. I don't remember. The weakness chart's been changed a bit, but it hits really good weakness, and it has a bunch of, obviously, all the VMAXs have a decent amount of health, but Dragapult's able to survive and just mess with your opponent's board so much, and it's just so hard to compete with, and almost gatekeeps single prizes out. But another deck that kind of gatekeeps stuff is Eternatus here, which is such a strong card. If you weren't around when Eternatus VMAX came out, it was insane. Completely dominated the game. Massive 340 health, which is still the biggest we've seen so far. I have a feeling Scarlet and Violet might change that, but 340 is absolutely massive, and on a stage 1 as well. It's just insane and so hard to KO. I mean, it's not that hard to KO because of its fighting weakness, which is unfortunate, but being able to hit dark weakness is also good for it. But really the 2 great things about it are, first of all, its attack, Dread End, 30 for each dark Pokemon in play. You may be thinking, if you're unfamiliar with Eternatus, that's 180. It's 30 with your active and your 5 bench. Then it's 6 Pokemon in play, 30 per. That's 180, which is underwhelming. I was just saying how with Dragapult that wasn't good, and it was able to spread that damage around. But it's not that. You can have up to 8 dark Pokemon in play or on your bench, due to its Eternal Zone ability, which is just insane. So you can fill your bench up and play like Crobats every turn, which is really nice, and just have a super consistent, or pretty consistent deck. You have access to Dark Patch as well, which is nice. And then you can just have 9 Pokemon in play now, those 3 extra bench spots, and now you're hitting 270 damage for 2 energy. And this was insane when it came out because it could KO tag teams, and now it's insane because you can KO V-Stars. One downside is with stuff like Palkia, as well as all the fighting stuff running around from time to time, it gets one-shotted sometimes, which is pretty bad, but it doesn't always get one-shotted, and when it's not, it will just run through your opponent. It also may struggle to set up because you can't play engine pieces like Inteleon and Barrel, but generally this deck's super strong, and it really deserves to be one of the best decks in the game and one of the best Pokemon VMAX ever. I was debating putting it higher, but it's fallen off recently. It's also one of the more vulnerable Pokemon. Cards like Path to Peak, Avery, and also Collapse Stadium crush this deck in a quite amusing fashion. But if your opponent's not doing that, you're probably just going to obliterate them. So Eternus is really crazy. It's one of the examples people turn to when they talk about power creep with health and damage going up. It's insane. But moving into the top three, number 3, this is a Pokemon that honestly I think I have, but I don't play a lot. But it's a really good card, and it's Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. The other pair of Calyrexes. What is this art? I have never seen this before. Apparently there's a snowflake on one of the cards. Anyways, so Ice Rider is super cool. Quite literally, I suppose, but it has a really good attack. Well, two solid attacks. Max Lance, which does essentially 250. You have 10 plus 120 for each energy that you want to discard from it. You can only discard 2 energy, but it's quite strong. 250, almost the amount of damage you need to KO V-Stars and the way you previously needed to KO tag teams, but then with Choice Belt, you'll get there. So pretty much you're just going to run through all your opponent's Pokemon. And you can also use Path to the Peak because you don't need abilities. This is why it's better than Shadow Rider. Shadow Rider was, as it came out the gate swinging, Ice Rider wasn't far behind it when it came out. And Ice Rider's been consistently there. And it hits such good numbers as well because it just hits those mid to high 200s, which are exactly what you want to hit for 2 energy on a VMAX or any form of pseudo stage 1. And you can also use Path. Like, you have all the pros, and you also have the knee attack and Ride the High King, which does 10 plus 30 for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, which does a few really good things. One, it punishes your opponent for playing bench Pokemon, so it kind of reduces their bench in a sense, which is really nice. And then it also can hit for 2 colorless without discarding your own energy. So you can just, it's just so good because you don't need to lose your energy. You can use it theoretically with a double turbo, though I'm not really sure if I've seen anyone do it, but it's just so strong having these options. It's not the best attack Ride to the High King, but Max Lance is one of the best attacks. So yeah, Ice Rider is absolutely insane. A lot of people underestimate it, myself included, but it really is one of the best Pokemon, honestly, of all time. Moving on to the second best, and yeah, this Pokemon is really good. It's the Rapid Strike. I think the only Rapid Strike Pokemon in this list, but is the Rapid Strike Pokemon, and that is Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. One of the best VMAXs ever because of its 2 amazing attacks, also massive health, solid typing. Psychic Weakness isn't great, but its fighting typing is so good, being able to hit stuff like Eternatus and Arceus for weakness, so as Pikachu and Zekrom when that was around. And it just cruises through those decks. One of the issues is that now the fighting type can't hit Arceus always for weakness because of Dunsparce, but it's not too big of an issue because you got 2 insane attacks here. The first of which is Gale Thrust, it does 150 essentially for 1 fighting on essentially a stage 1, which is just insane. And you have to move to the active, but there's so many ways of doing that, especially with the Rapid Strike tools, that it's pretty much free. So pretty much you go ahead and hit your opponent's Pokemon. And it's not an insane amount of damage, but it's enough to get the job done against single prizers, take out some 2 prizers, and hit, obviously, and do a bunch of damage to 3 prizes or 2 prizes like V-Stars. And then you can also go ahead and Cheryl after that. You got 330 health, so you should be living. And then you can just go ahead and do it again. So pretty much you can just go in with 2 Urshifu VMAXs. This isn't even the best way the deck's played, but it's an option where you're pretty much invincible. You're dealing tons of damage every turn, and your opponent can't really do anything about it. And pretty much you just chip away at them until you win. That's not the best way to play the deck, though, because you have this other attack, G-Max Rapid Flow, for 2 fighting and a colorless, but with Rapid Strike energy, you can pay it in 2 turns, and with stuff like Raihan, Melanie, Glaring Moltres View with Energy Switch, as well as a few other things. You can pay it in one turn, and it's not even that bad. And then you discard the energy attached to it. It does 120 to your opponent's Pokemon. So this is 240 for essentially 2 attachments, sometimes 1, and this is insane. So you can just pick away at your opponent's single prizes, just take 2 prizes right away, which is that's nice. It's really good. You'll trade really well, and you can Cheryl afterwards. So very strong attack there, but you can also just use it when your opponent, as I mentioned with Dragapult and Jolteon, if they like retreat, you can just pick them off, and that's so good. So now your opponent can't run. You can also just set up things so you win within a few attacks. You can use stuff like Passimian and Telescopic Sight to boost your damage a ton as well. So now you can actually be hitting... You can be hitting 360 damage with this if you have Passimian, Telescopic Sight, and you're, say, hitting double Crobats. You've all of a sudden taken 4 prizes in one turn, which isn't too common, but it could happen. And that can be used to defeat top decks like Mew VMAX, with your Genesect and stuff like that. And pretty much you'll just crush your opponents with this. And it's so strong. It was by far the best deck when it came out, and it's been pretty solid ever since. Its weakness to Psychic isn't great with Shadow Rider and Dragapult and stuff, but it's such a strong Pokemon. It's one of the best Pokemon just in like a vacuum ever printed. It might be the best Pokemon ever printed. The tools around it are good, but they're not necessarily insane compared to some of the other ones. Notably the #1 spot on this list, but it's so strong. It does struggle against bench barrier as well, which is a bit of an issue, which we see on Manaphy, Mew. Yeah, most of that. But you can get through that with some of the Rapid Strike stuff like Metacham, and some other cards like Inteleon and Blastoise, Radiant Blastoise. So it's super good. If you don't have it, you should get this. It's like one of the best cards ever. So it's not even that expensive either. It's just so good. I should probably play this again some more. I haven't played it in a little while. But one of the reasons, and if you notice any deck I missed, it's Mew VMAX, right? Mew VMAX really overpowered. It's Psychic, it shuts down Urshifu, right? So that's probably the reason I haven't been playing it. Mew VMAX, it's the best VMAX. I don't think... I was considering going reverse order, because I don't think... if you know the game, you'll know that it's like the best VMAX. There's not really any debating it. I suppose there are a few arguments. It's Cross Fusion Strike. Copies one of your bench Fusion Strike Pokemon's attacks to use. And so a lot of the times you'll be copying Genesect, which isn't Mew's attack, or Meloetta, which also isn't Mew's attack. But I don't know. It's still Mew's attack, right? The Mew's how you attack with it. It was the best deck in format by far when it came out. Like, when I say by far, it was like... I don't know. It was too much in the meta. And then in the next set, it was still too much in the meta. And then the set after that, it was still too much in the meta. Not necessarily the best deck, but it's been really good. And even now, it's still super good. It just one-shots everything. Turn 1. And now people have shifted away to more healing-based, and there are more counters being printed to it. But it's still so insane. It has a Pokemon that's been printed that one-shots it for free. And it's still like dominating all over the place. And then you can copy Psychic Leap to heal, which is insane. You can hit through effects with Max Miracle. You can just do massive damage as well. You can one-shot anything with this. You got Power Tablets. You got Meloetta. You can hit... let's see. I think you can hit... 300... No. I think you can hit... yeah, you can hit 430 with this. Which is absurd with Meloetta and Power Tablets. You can just kill everything. So the deck's beatable if you have the right text, and a lot of them. But that's the only way you beat it. Let's go to the other Mew art. So yeah, it's so strong. If you don't have it, it's probably because it's too expensive. Because it's absurdly expensive. Because it's absurdly good. This is like the best card. I want to say it's in contention for the best card ever printed. Debatably, the reason it's in consideration, at least the best deck ever. Genesect V is so good. If you don't know, yeah, I'll pull up Genesect. It's so good. Pretty much draws through like your whole deck on the first turn of the game. Fusion Strike system. Yep. So once you're on your turn, for each Genesect, you may draw until you have as many cards in your hand as you have Fusion Strike Pokemon in play. So if you can get down to 0 cards 4 times for each Genesect, which isn't too crazy. You probably won't quite get that, but you could do that a few times. You can get down to low a few times. So you draw until you have as many. You draw to fill your hand to the number of Fusion Strike you have in play, which obviously you want to be 6. And so you can draw 24 cards in the first turn of the game without a supporter or items, which is absurd. That's like half your deck. And then it has this amazing attack, Technoblast, just 210, which isn't great necessarily by itself. It's not bad. If it was just Genesect, it'd be good. But with Mew, you got this free retreater, massive HP, insane damage consistency, and all that stuff. And then you can just copy this attack for 1 attachment as well with Double Turbo or with Elisa's Sparkle. And the deck literally, it doesn't even need supporters. It's absurd. The one thing that can shut it off is Path, but you can just play Stadiums. Or Dark Pokemon, but they're not even... You can just kill them, and it doesn't even matter. You can have more health with Oricorio. Mew VMAX is absolutely insane, and it's by far the best VMAX. If you don't say so, I don't know. I don't know. It's so good. It just kills everything. Debatably, it's hurt the game quite a bit because it's so powerful. And it's so good. If you don't have it, you probably want to pick it up. It's staying in format for another year and a bit. So yeah, probably. So yeah, Mew VMAX by far the best VMAX. If you disagree with any of those, though, tell me down below. I think I was pretty accurate here, though. There are a lot of very good VMAXs. I'll name some that didn't make the list, I guess. There's some throwbacks like Scorch. Victini is also very good. Single Strike Urshifu, as I said. Malamar VMAX is also a pretty cool one. Leafeon and Sylveon is 2 of the evolutions that didn't make it, as well as Gengar, which I mentioned. So there's some really, really cool, powerful VMAXs. I know a lot of you don't like VMAXs, and I don't necessarily love them either, but they're pretty fun. They're fun to use. They are really strong, and they got some really cool arts here as well. So comment down below what you think of this. And as I said, if you enjoy this, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed, or even if you liked it as well. If you leave a like on the video, or if you don't, leave a dislike on the video. Any feedback to me is very much appreciated. Yeah, I hope you all enjoy this video, though. And as always, I'm just really excited to see each and every one of you in the next video.